I'm Wilf Nichols, your host of Homegrown, a show all about gardening in Newfoundland and Labrador. On this week's show, we're off to the community of St. Shots, where we'll meet up with Pat Hewitt, owner and operator of Emerald Sods, the largest sod-producing farm in the province. Pat and his staff have turned a Newfoundland bog into a beautiful green meadow. And just because you buy a top quality sod from a sod producer, it doesn't guarantee a long-lasting green lawn. Pat will show us how to prepare the ground before you put the sod in place, because if you don't do it correctly, you could be plagued with all sorts of problems down the road. Dr. Peggy Dixon will explain about the damage that certain flies can do in our garden, but as always, Peggy will give us some advice on how to cope with those problems. And after a whole summer of planting, watering, weeding, and all the other chores you have to do in a vegetable garden, Debbie and Tim have made it to harvest time. Now the fun begins. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these short messages. Welcome back. It's a bit of a blustery day, but I'm right at the southern tip of the Avalon Peninsula at St. Shots, and I'm surrounded by the most wonderful turf because I'm at the Emerald Sod Farm with Pat Hewitt, owner and operator. Nice to see you, Pat.
Good to see you.
So this is amazing because this place used to be just natural bog.
That's correct, yes. What we see in the background here, this field we're standing on was exactly the same as that.
Right.
When we came here back in '83, we started developing this land for fuel peat purposes.
Oh, so using peat for fuel. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then in the late '80s, early '90s, we developed it into a sod producing farm.
Right.
And peatland.
Well, that must have been the first one here in Newfoundland.
That was the very first one in Newfoundland.
Right.
Yes.
And it's got to be the biggest. I mean, this is huge here.
Yes, that's we're still the biggest in Newfoundland. We have over 100 acres of land here. We have over 85 acres planted and 25 to 30 acres ready to come on.
Wow. And I suppose with all the building that's going on in Newfoundland, there's a really big demand for good sod.
Oh, for sure, yes.
Yeah.
Those last couple of years, last 4 or 5 years, the demand has been good.
Yeah.
And in the early days, it was slow.
Yeah.
So we started producing in 1991. We did our first harvest. We planted in 1990 for the first time.
Well, when I look at this wonderful sod that we're standing on, I mean, how old is this sod?
This sod would be 1 year old.
Right.
And it's a mixture of bluegrass and fescue.
Okay, so tell me the difference.
Well, the wide parallel-shaped blade is a bluegrass blade.
Okay.
And the fine round blade is the fescue blade.
All right.
We grow the fescue. We started growing the fescue for shade, for the purposes of shaded areas, especially in the older part of St. John's. We were having some problems with the bluegrass. The fescue is a better and more resistant to shade.
Yeah.
And at present, we're growing fescues now that have endophyte, a fungus within the grass that hopefully going to be resistant to the chinch bug, which is another major problem in the grass and the turf industry today.
Wow. So this is like a little bit of research going on here.
A bit of research going on here for sure. We have 66% of fescue and 33% of bluegrass in this particular mix. And we also grow the 100% bluegrass as well.
But that's a real sunny spot.
Open areas, open lawns, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Okay, so this is about a year old, and is this almost ready for harvesting?
This is ready for harvesting now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
this, right next to us here is an area that's been harvested just in the last week.
Oh yes, look at that. Right. And so when you harvest, how much do you take up?
We try to take a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of the soil.
Right.
Peat soil, with the sod.
Right.
So overall, with the thatch, the soil, and the grass, and it's all about 1.5 to 2 inches, about 1.5 inches overall.
Okay.
But we try to keep this peat soil that we're removing at about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
Of course, the peat is made from grasses and sedges and root. All the peat around here came from grasses. It's a sedge-type peat. So the clippings and the root structure from the grass is actually replenishing the soil.
So
we hope that we're putting back the 1/2 inch.
It's a renewable resource. So you're not
basically renewable, yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the thing that I always talk about with sod and with lawns and everything is liming, and the idea of actually growing grass on peat actually goes against everything I know. So you must have a lot of liming to do here.
A lot of liming, yes. The pH is around 3.5 to 4 when we start,
boy.
and we to bring it up to 6.5. 6.5 to 7 where we need it. It takes anywhere from 7 to 9 tons of lime per acre in your first crop.
Lime.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we find that probably the second year we're down to about 3 tons an acre, and after that it's usually a ton and a half an acre.
Yeah.
Just to keep the pH at the level we need it at.
And then you seed in about July, August?
We seed in July, August, yes, 15th of July, and we usually try to cut off our seeding around about the 20th of August.
Yeah, yeah. And you've created such a gorgeous area here. I mean, I should have brought my putter and my golf balls or something. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So anyway, you harvest it in the fall, and if I got a pallet of sod from you guys dumped near my garden, I want to ask you to tell me how I deal with it. So let's go see a pallet of sod, and you can tell me about all the installation.
Certainly, yes.
Okay, let's go over there.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We've got a whole bunch of sod here, and Pat, let's talk about this. Now, this is really thick stuff, and it's really tough.
Yes, that's mature sod. Well, the reason for that is that sod's been grown for 12 months, or a little over 12 months.
Right.
And we like to grow it out for 12 months so that it's mature enough and tough enough that you can pick it up like this by one end without having it fall apart.
That's right, you can't even pull it apart, no. And so this is about what? About 1/2 inch of...
About 1/2 inch of soil, yes.
Yeah.
We like to have it 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of soil.
Right.
Together with the thatch and the grass, it's overall about an inch.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a beautiful piece of sod here, and I've got a new garden. So
Yes.
Let's go through the installation. Now, this is a bit of show business, but we've organised a little bit over here, and we're going to play around with installation. So let's go over there and see what we're doing.
Okay, so we'll be brought in and dropped off at beside your lawn on pallet like this one here.
Right.
640 square feet on the pallet. So it's brought in, first off you have your 6 inches of topsoil.
6 inches?
6 inches
now,
of
that's
topsoil.
a lot of topsoil.
Yeah, 4 inches compact and 6 inches when it's spread loose.
Okay.
For best results you need to have that. Then you need to put down limestone.
Right.
We recommend a general rule of thumb would be you put in 100 pounds of limestone per 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And you can either use the powdered lime like this, or you could use your pelletized lime and put it in with a spreader. And then you should rake it in with the back.
Well, I can do that.
Just a little
I'll
with
do
the
that.
back of your rake.
Yeah.
And then mix it down into the soil.
And this has got to be really nice and flat as you possibly can.
Flat as you possibly can.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you put in your fertilizer, and we recommend 6-12-12 fertilizer at a rate of about 20 to 30 pounds per 1,000 square feet.
And 6-12-12, of course, low in nitrogen.
Low in
because
nitrogen.
Really what you want here to start off with is good root growth and good
root
health.
growth, yeah.
You don't want a whole bunch of top growth.
True, and you don't want to have too much nitrogen because you could burn the root structure
All right.
of your sod.
Yeah. And I suppose you want stones out and any lumps like that.
Yeah, all rocks and debris
Yeah.
should be removed.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, now
And-
we've got our bed all made.
Yeah, light rolling of the soil can be done, it's optional. But
Right.
if you have a nice level soil like this, you wouldn't need to roll it.
Okay.
So you would just, then just take your sod and roll it in.
Well, it's like carpet. You're like
Yeah.
you're laying carpet
And
here.
then you stagger your joints so that you don't have two sods and you get any one plate.
Okay.
Put them very tight together.
Yep.
Make sure the seams are tight together and the butts are tight when your next sod comes in close to it.
And I suppose you could peg these if you're on a
If you're
slope.
on a slope, you would
Right.
peg the upper edges
Yeah.
along the top edges on a slope.
Okay.
So here we're on level, so you wouldn't need to. But if there's any amount of slope, you certainly would have to peg.
Now you
And immediately after installing, you should water.
got to water
Yes, an inch of water per day for the first couple of weeks.
because I've seen lawns where you've a lot of shrinkage.
Yes, that's because the soil,
Yeah.
being a very wet soil, once you take it out and you put it in dry conditions, it's going to dry out and shrink, and they'll open in the seams.
Okay.
And the reason you stagger is if you get a runoff from a slope, you break your joints so that you don't get an erosion down through
Oh, you end up with a river.
with the river down
Right.
at the ends of the
Exactly.
sod.
Okay.
So this breaks them. You stagger off all your joints like that,
How long does
and you go across the slope
Oh, okay.
rather than up and down the slope.
Good idea. How long does a lawn like this take to establish?
A tractor trailer load of sod, which is 22 pallets of sod, 6 installers could install that in an 8-hour shift.
In an 8-hour shift?
8-hour shift,
Boy.
yeah.
So that cuts down on the weight if you're
Yes.
doing it from seed.
Oh yes, yeah, it's a couple of hours for the average lawn, you know.
Amazing, amazing.
hours.
Okay, so we've laid it now. We've pegged it if it's on a slope. We've watered it, and what about aftercare?
Well, after what you need to do in the fall, you need to give it limestone and fertilizer. Again, we just go with a general rule of thumb without doing soil tests. We generally recommend about 50 pounds of limestone per 1,000 square feet.
Right.
And 15 to 20 pounds of fertilizer in the fall. And in the spring, you go with your 15 to 20 pounds of fertilizer per 1,000 square feet. And in the
Excellent.
spring and fall, we would use something like a 15-5-15 or a 15-15-15.
Great.
With 2% FDE for the trace elements, and magnesium is what we recommend.
Lots to know. Thank you so much, Pat. It's been a delight. It's been a bit of a windy day, but I'm so glad we got down here.
Usually is here.
And thank you for all this. I'm gonna think about laying sod. We'll be right back. Dr. Peggy Dixon will respond to a question from one of our viewers about some odd-looking flies they've seen in their garden.
I've noticed 2 types of flies in my vegetable garden, and I was wondering, what do they do and how do I control them?
Thanks for that question. And the situation you've described is really common in Newfoundland gardens. What's happening is that your vegetables are attacked by different species of flies. In the case of the cabbage family, which of course includes cabbage and turnip, broccoli, cauliflower, and so on, the culprit is the cabbage maggot fly. And the flies actually look a little bit like small house flies. They're a bit grayish in color, but they look very similar to a housefly. And the female flies, she lays they lay their eggs at the base of the leaves. So on a turnip it would be about here, on a cabbage or whatever it would be just at the base of the leaves that are sticking out of the soil, more or less at soil level. What happens then, the eggs hatch and they develop into little larvae which crawl down into the soil and actually feed on the roots. Whether it's a turnip or a cabbage or whatever, they're feeding on the roots. They can actually kill the plants or else severely disfigure them like this. When they're finished feeding, the larvae turn into brown cocoons. You'll see these in the soil as well. And the cocoons then eventually, when they're finished developing, of course the fly will come out of them and the cycle starts again. With regards to the carrots, it's a similar situation, slightly different fly, different species. She's sort of a blackish green color, but she does the same thing. She lays her eggs on the carrot, the maggots hatch out of the eggs, go down, feed on the carrot, and really do a lot of tunneling and disfigure the carrot. What you can do in both of these cases, what's a great control method is to use row covers. There's a couple of things you need to remember if you're using row covers though that are pretty important. One is to make sure that the edges of the row cover are buried in the ground so that the flies can't get up underneath. You can use boards or rocks or soil, whatever you have handy. The other really important thing is to try and make sure that you don't grow the same crop, a related crop as last year if you're using a row cover. For example, if you grew turnip in one place last year, you wouldn't put cabbage there with a row cover this year because those cocoons are in the soil, and when the flies hatch or emerge, they're going to come up out of the soil, and you've created a perfect little greenhouse environment for them, and they're going to be actually worse. But having said that about row covers, one thing to keep in mind is, although the damage looks pretty nasty and severe, if you can just cut it away and still use the vegetable. It's perfectly safe to eat.
Well, Debbie and Tim have found their way to that great time in the garden, and that's harvest time. But there's still a little bit of work to do, and Debbie still has a bit of advice for Tim.
Hi, and welcome back to the Vegetable Patch. We're here with Tim Murray, and we're just going to do my favorite part, the harvest for the season. How are you today?
Good.
What are we going to harvest today, Tim?
I guess we'll start first with the turnip. Is there any particular way to harvest it, or just rip it up and kind of cut off what's not good?
Yeah, just pull it up out of the ground. It's a bit early, but it's perfect. They're firm and nice, ready for planting, or ready for harvest. So you just cut the tops off them and trim off the bottom. You know, in the supermarkets you get all those roots are all trimmed off so that they're ready for peeling in the kitchen.
So what do we do with all these roots and stuff when we're done?
Well, we can start composting.
Okay.
Have you got your compost pile started yet, the year?
No, not yet.
No? You've been just taking it and throwing it at the end of the field?
Yeah, basically.
So I brought my basket. There you go. Can I haul this one up?
Sure.
You want to take that one? I'll let you do all the trimming. So what we should do is build some sort of bin, or you can buy a commercial compost bin.
Okay.
To put all these leaves in. They'll break down over the winter, and then in the spring you'll have some nice rich humus that you can dig back into the ground.
Sure.
So if any of this is diseased, I wouldn't put it in the compost pile, but all that looks fresh and good, so not a problem.
Okay.
If you want to chop it up a little bit smaller, we can do that.
Sure.
Let's have a look at the cauliflower. Well, that's a nice head there.
So you got a big head here.
So are you cooking supper for me tonight?
Not much in the kitchen.
You're just a gardener, so
yeah.
I have to cook, do I?
So there's about insects that might be found in the vegetables. Is there any helpful techniques to get rid of them?
What I do, when you bring that in from the garden, of course it still has a little bit of field heat in it, so you want to try and cool it off. I fill up the sink with cold water, add a little bit of salt, and just soak the vegetables in the water. That, if there's any grubs or insects, they'll float to the surface, and that'll help clean them up. And then I rinse it with fresh water, and you're ready to boil. Put it in the pot. Or chop it up and eat it fresh. So yeah, there's a little bit there that needs to be cleaned up. Throw that in. Now, did you want to have a look at some of the cabbages?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, here are the cabbages.
Oh yes, they're looking good, Tim. I got a little bit of damage on that one.
Yeah.
So for harvest, you just trim off the leaves, so you just crack off the stem. You don't use a knife for that? No. Don't need to.
No. So I guess as we see here, there's some insects damage. Is it still good to eat?
Oh yes, yeah. No, I would just trim off some of these really damaged leaves.
Sure.
Pull some of that back. That's why you can see they got in and they'll eat out all this area here. So it's good to get control early on, or they'll damage the whole head all the way through. But you can still clean this up, trim off some of the outside leaves, and there's something salvageable here yet. Do you want to get another one? Maybe
Sure.
we might need an extra one where we're gonna have to cut some lot of this away. Bye bye.
I think that take care of that.
Yeah. So what kind of cabbage is this?
It's lake cabbage.
Yeah.
Your regular
Yeah. It's
green.
got the pointed head to it, so
Sure.
it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
It's a little bit sweeter.
I don't know. I haven't really tried it yet.
Well, we'll soon see, won't we?
Soon see indeed.
Join us next week in the vegetable garden. We'll see what else there is to harvest and see what it looks like in the pot. Thank you very much.
Well, despite all the problems that Tim faced during the year, I think the garden turned out beautifully. Next week, we'll telecast the final show in the series. The fall is upon us, and a visit to Holland Nurseries in St. John's will find us talking about the wonderful world of bulbs. General Manager Gord Kennedy will introduce us to a large array of bulbs on the market and will show us a trick or two about forcing some bulbs to show their bloom in the midwinter. Dr. Peggy Dixon will answer a question about the hunting wasp. It's a little different from the wasp we're used to, but it's no less important. Debbie and Tim continue their harvesting, and Tim is especially proud of his Swiss chard, his beets and his squash.
You can still make pickles with those.
Before we go, I'd like to say thanks to the people that helped us put this show together. Avis Rent-A-Car and Holiday Inns in Corner Brook helped us with transportation and accommodation. Landscape Newfoundland and Labrador, our non-profit trade association, and the agricultural policy framework, well, without them, there would be no homegrown. So, thanks to you for watching, and we'll see you next week.